Hey there everyone, it's Nina. Thanks for joining me today for a new video. Today I'm going to be using the Simon Says Stamp March 2024 card kit, which features a beautiful assortment of butterfly and nature themed products. I was really excited to create with this kit and I ended up making two different cards. We're going to start with this one here that features these vellum butterflies on top of this very colorful pattern paper. So the stamp set in the kit is the Mix and Match Butterflies stamp set. And you can mix and match the elements of these butterflies to make your own custom butterflies, which is a lot of fun. I'm going to stamp the butterflies onto some vellum. I've picked out some Simon Says Stamp vellum that I've prepped with some of my Simon Says Stamp powder tool, and I'll ink it up with embossing ink so that way I can emboss these with white embossing powder. I want that nice bright white embossing powder on top of this vellum, and that's going to look really nice on the super colorful paper that I'm going to be using from the kit. There's a lot of color in that paper, so I wanted the butterflies to be a little bit more simple to offset the busyness. So I stamped the butterflies twice so that way I'll have two, and I'm going to emboss them both with that white embossing powder. When you're embossing with vellum, you always want to make sure your heat tool is nice and hot before bringing it to the surface of the vellum, so that way that will minimize the amount of warping that you'll end up getting. Once I have heat set both of these pieces, then I'm going to bring in the coordinating die set. The kit comes with the die set for one of the butterflies, and then you can also get the other die set separately, which cuts out all the other butterflies and the greetings separately. So I'm going to have links to everything down below in the video description, so that way you can find everything that I'm using today and also that additional die set. But basically I used the dies that were in the kit to cut out these particular butterfly pieces. And this is what I'm going to use to make the butterflies dimensional on my project. So once I have all my pieces cut out, I'm going to start figuring out the placement for these so that way I can get an idea of how I want everything to get laid out. I am going to add a greeting as well, and this is part of my process. I like to be able to kind of, as I'm working and starting to make my pieces, kind of lay them on my project and see where they're going. That helps me get a visual in my head so that way I can start deciding and formulating a plan for what I want to add later. To glue all of my butterfly pieces together, I'm going to use some Simon Says Stamp Craft Tacky Glue, of which you get a whole bottle in the kit. I just put a little bit of adhesive on the backside of the body of the butterfly and then glued that to the two wings. Then each of those butterfly pieces I glued straight down onto my pattern paper from the kit, which is cut to be 4 1/4 by 6 1/4, and that's a little bit smaller than a 5 by 7 card. So these butterflies are going to look awesome floating across this paper, which is so striking. And I thought I would mat it with a bit of Simon Says Stamp matte gold cardstock, which you also get a sheet of in the kit. This is going to give a very elegant trim to this pattern paper, and it will also offset from the card base that I'm going to make from some soft navy cardstock really nicely. So to adhere these two pieces together, I just used some Simon Says Stamp Terrific tape, and I trimmed that gold panel down so it's a little bit larger than my pattern paper. And this is going to get adhered onto my 5 by 7 card that I made from soft navy cardstock. I'm pulling out some of this shimmer splatter from Brutus Monroe. I believe the proper name is Aqua Splatter. This is the gold color, and I'm going to splatter this onto my project to get a nice array of gold detailing across my paper. This is going to really accent that gold frame nicely, and I really like the organic feel of the splatters. On some soft navy cardstock, I'm also going to stamp a sentiment. I'm using some embossing ink, and I've already prepped the surface with my powder tool. I'm using a sentiment stamp from the stamp set, and I'm going to emboss it with gold embossing powder, which will also tie nicely with the gold splattering and the gold frame that we have around our pattern paper. I did fussy cut the sentiment out, but if you have the coordinating sentiment dies, then you'll be able to use the die to cut the greeting out. I just don't have the sentiment dies for this particular stamp set yet. So I used my Simon Says Stamp fine tip scissors to cut the greeting out, and then I'm going to use a small piece of 3D foam square to attach the greeting onto my card. Everything's just about done, but I did want to pull out some of these brand new Pawsitively Dazzling gems from Simon Says Stamp. You get an entire jar of the Cool Tones Dazzling gems in your kit, which are so beautiful. They catch the light like no other gem I've ever had. I really, really love these gems. And I love how that teal color really brought out some of the other colors that were in the pattern paper. And that really completed my entire project. Check out how those gems catch the light and how they shine so beautifully. With those vellum butterflies offsetting that wonderful pattern paper, this card is a showstopper. So I'm really excited how this card turned out, but I did want to create another card because I was really inspired by the kit contents. So I'm going to now use some of the pattern paper with the transparencies that you get in the kit. There's an entire pack of Tim Holtz transparencies in this kit, and I'm going to use some of those to add some embellishment to my card. I first started by die cutting a Simon Says Stamp nested circle die from some white cardstock, and I'm going to ink blend onto this to create a little bit of a sky. I'm going to use one of the bird transparencies in the kit to add on top of that. That's going to make a nice little scene on top of some of the pattern paper. So I used 3 different colors. I used purple, teal, and yellow, and that creates a really nice color assortment that goes nicely with the pattern paper. Using that same nested circle die, I'm going to cut into my pattern paper to create a window, and that's going to allow me to tuck the bird and my little sky piece behind there and give a little bit of dimension, because we're going to actually raise the panel of pattern paper up off of the card. I also used the pattern paper with this FIDDLY leaf die from Simon Says Stamp so that I could die cut this little sprig of greenery to add along the bottom of my window, which will ground the bird nicely. I'm going to splatter this with a bit of Tim Holtz brown mica stain. This gives me not only some contrast with the splatters, but also a little bit of shimmer, which is nice. I did pop my panel of pattern paper up onto my A2 card, like I mentioned, and this is going to then work beautifully with that background circle that we made, and that's going to get glued straight down onto the card. So there is some relief there. That way we have the pattern paper raised up, and then the background panel is straight down on the card, so you've got that depth. I also used that FIDDLY leaf and glued that with some of the Simon Says Stamp Craft Tacky Glue along the bottom of my window, so that way I have a grounding area for my bird to sit. That bird, I also used a small bit of Craft Tacky Glue to adhere down onto the card project. And I tucked him under the circle but allowed his tail to stick out, which gives the scene a little bit more life. I also used another one of those transparencies to add some interest to my background. I'm going to glue that along the top left of my card. And then I also added a small little brad from Tim Holtz on there as well. And it's going to help ground that piece and make it look like it was intentional. The little brads are not part of the kit, but they're a great embellishment to use for projects like this. I used the same stamp set from the kit, and I'm going to stamp this Thinking of You sentiment onto some of the soft navy cardstock with embossing ink. I did prep the surface with my powder tool before sprinkling on some cream embossing powder from Simon Says Stamp. Then I'll use my heat tool to set that, and that gives me a nice, beautiful greeting on top of this dark cardstock, which will add a lot of contrast. I attached that greeting onto my card just with a few small strips of foam tape, and I glued that along the bottom left. And that's going to finish up this card, which featured a lot of fun elements from the kit as well, including the transparencies and the pattern paper. So I hope that these 2 ideas were inspiring to you. If you'd like to see another project that I made with the Simon Says Stamp March 2024 card kit, you're going to want to go check out the Simon Says Stamp Instagram page. I have a link to it down in the video description, so you can go check it out. Here's a sneak peek of it. It features that beautiful butterfly stamp set, the dies, and also one of the action wobbles that is included in the kit. You get 2 action wobbles, and they are perfect for making your butterflies flutter. So if you want to see how I made it, be sure to go check out the Simon Says Stamp Instagram page for that video. Well, friends, I hope you enjoyed today's content. Thank you so much for stopping by and spending some time with me. I'm very grateful that you did. I can't wait to come back and share more with you all. So until next time, have a fabulous day, and thanks for watching.